So we are going to redo the 2AR from round 4 at TSC between Greenhill and Harvey Westlake. Greenhill was the neg. They read a conditional word pick.
Greenhill was that. Greenhill was the. Yeah, never mind. That's right.
Yeah, Greenhill was the neg. They read a conditional word pick. And Cameron did not go for condo word picks good or bad, rather, in the 2AR. He went for substance, but we're going to practice the debate where you do go for theory in that speech. So, ready whenever you are, Parker.
Alright, so we're just gonna start on the video, then enter manager.
Cool.
Ready?
Yep.
They say recently that they conceded competing interpretations of the chief flow under one theory, but you can't make new arguments for recently in the next 3 seconds that this leads to your intervention because there's no bright line for when a large amount of terminal defense is enough to round down to 0, which means never leads to judgment intervention. That always arguments our versatility since we can always get better become better debaters. We can never stop judges from intervening us. Now to drop debater arguments. The framing issue here is that condo does not you cannot drop the argument on condo since it essentially gives you exactly what you want, i.e. you take the counterplan, you say I don't have to answer the counterplan anymore, but that's exactly my point. After wasted all this time on theory, I was essentially just are doing exactly what I have to do on substance theory, just beating the counterplan, just did it on a different layer, but you can still win substance, which you still have a 2-1 now. You say it's key to have a substance debate, but turn my arguments are better for a key to a long-term substance debate because you cannot avoid a debate since you're not going to read these abusive arguments in the future because you know you'll lose if you read them. Now let's go to the intro counter. The framing issue here is that you might have one of the advocacy skills is the most important impact, but the question is still size of link and size of impact, and your arguments make 0 sense because they do not link to the intersection between a condo word picks, between conditionality and word picks. They just talk about how individually they are good, but that does not prove together that they are necessarily good, which is what only my offense links to, which means that is the only offense left in the debate, and it means the only thing I've definitely had on the link debate. Now, let's go into my interpretation. You can send the interpretation that you have to read, you can't read condo word picks, the violation is conceded, and now this is where you vote after. You can send the ground certainty says that word picks do almost the entirety of the AC, which means to move 6 minutes AC offense, which means I have to spend a ton of time constructing offense in the 1AR, which will waste a ton of 1AR time in 1AR strategy, but you can just kick out of that if it's conditional, which means you remove the only strategy I have to counteract word picks, which means that the 1AR is always screwed. No, you have a key response. You say it happens under normal conditionality. No, normal conditionality does not move 6 minutes AC offense, which means that you don't need to collapse the counterplay. You say times use inevitable, but this does not apply to this app specifically because it's a question of strategy. Should you claim that my only 1AR good strategy is gone now? You say you have to test the ass rhetoric, but you can still test the ass rhetoric, you just have to do it unconditionally. You say test that from multiple angles, but you can still do this. That's exactly my point. You can just either do it with, you can test the app with a very long word pick counterplan and other disadvantages, or you can just read multiple counterplans that are not word picks. That's also 100% of your offense. Now let's go into the counter arguments. These arguments are all do not make a lot of sense. You say that at any advantage, disadvantage, any advantage to the app is disadvantage to the scope, but first it just means that I have to win a nib. I still have to win 2 layers, even if the second nib is slightly easier to win. I still have to have 2 layers compared to your 1. Second, that's clearly not the case in this circumstance. You spend like 4 minutes on substance proving that is not the case, which means that you still have a significant amount of arguments you can weigh against. Now you say I chose the plan, but first my arguments are ground scheme, not perfectly standard, so it's not relevant. Second is that even if I choose the words in my plan text, it does not mean I can spend time in AC justifying every single one of them. It's literally impossible. Also, it wastes a ton of 1 AC time now. So now remember the framing issue here is that even if you have one other impacts are large, you don't have a link to them, which means that those arguments are not relevant since I've denied you access to them. Even if you win that they are a big impact, you have not won that you have access to that impact. The only impact that's left in the debate is that you screw over the 1AR since I lose my only strategy to combat word picks.
Okay. So why did you not go for advocacy skills as non-unique? You can still gain advocacy skills? Or do you go for that when you say AT test the app rhetoric, you can test it, you just test it unconditionally? Is that what you meant to say?
That's what I said on the advocacy skills.
So
it was slightly jumbled. But,
okay, so I think what you should be saying that is you said you need to test the apps rhetoric. This is the same as your advocacy skills link, but you can get your advocacy skills in an unconditional context. There's no reason you need specifically conditionality to leverage advocacy skills.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
that's
I
what
think
I thought I was doing. I guess I was.
Yeah, rhetorically, you certainly did not say that. I think the way you sounded rhetorically is that you're conceding advocacy skills and trying to outweigh it, which is not what you were trying to say. So it's definitely concerning that that's the message I'm taking away from the 2AR here. right? So, for instance, specifically, you say framing issue is, let me find it. Um, yeah. So you go to the interp counter-interp debate. You say framing issues, advocacy skills might be the biggest impact, but it's a question of size of link. The intersection of both condo and pics is bad, which means you're ahead on the link debate. I think that that is fine, but then when you get to the line by line on advocacy skills, you need to be like, the 2NR's advocacy skills offense makes no sense whatsoever because it begs the question of why you can't become a good advocate in a world of the counter interpretation. I still allow you to read your word pick. I just ask for you not to do it conditionally. In fact, it probably makes you a better advocate because it forces you to actually be responsible for the discursive implications that you call people out on. You can't just call me out on a word and then realize you're wrong and still win the round anyways. It puts pressure on you to have argumentative responsibility, which is a key part of being a good advocate.
Yeah.
So you're missing that second argument there, which is the turn about the advocacy skills actually being better in the model of the counter interpretation.
Yeah.
Which means that you seize their link on advocacy skills.
Yeah, makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Also, why are you conceding advocacy skills is bigger than ground?
Because it was the argument at the one end, so I can't contest it.
It was in the one end?
Yeah.
I see, okay.
It was in the 1AR. No, it was in the one end.
So the 1AR dropped it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I see what you're saying. So that's why that framing is there. That makes perfect sense to me. So other thoughts I have. Can we just start at the top?
Yeah.
Okay. So conceding, competing interpretations on a team flow, can't make new reasonability arguments in the 2NR, leads to intervention, no bright line for large defense, outweigh on reversibility. I think you're doing the competing interpretations reasonability debate fine. I would add one reason why no 2NR applications here, like a warrant for no new 2NR arguments. So I don't. Okay. Why? I mean, I guess my question is, why are you going for this reversibility / judge intervention argument, given that they conceded competing interpretations in the one end?
Well, it's because like they read competing interpretations, so.
So he read both competing interpretations and reasonability?
Yeah, I read competing interpretations in the one end and then reasonability in the 2NR.
And did he acknowledge the discrepancy?
No.
Okay, so I would have framed it like this. I would have been, framing issue on competing interpretations and reasonabilities of the 2NR is contradictory with the 1NC. The 1NC says competing interpretations on topicality and then reads reasonability on the counter interpretation. Makes no sense. It leaves the affirmative arguing against itself every single time. Reject contradictory arguments. Let the affirmative choose which part of the contradiction it wants to accept, because that is the only way to counterbalance the fact that you're literally forcing me to argue against myself. Your arguments make no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
I choose competing interps.
Cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think the way I just did it was super inefficient. I think you could basically cut what I said into like 2 sentences. Like, it's contradictory. Contradictory means I get to choose which plank. Otherwise, I'm left arguing against myself.
Yeah.
So that should be the first argument. Second argument should be the intervention argument.
Yeah.
Cool?
Yep.
So I think the contradictions is the rhetorical change I want to hear.
Yeah.
Specifically on contradictions. Now, on drop debater. I think on Drop the Debater, the framing issue needs to be faster and shorter. For you can't drop the debater on condo because drop the arg, or sorry, you can't drop the arg on condo because drop the arg is condo. You were very inefficient in articulating this argument. I think it's an argument you got from the policy round we watched yesterday, where the kid was going for condo and the 2AR.
No, it's the argument that.
Okay. Well, weird then, because there was also the argument that the kid made in the policy debate. But anyways, the point is, this argument should take like 5 seconds max. This is a fantastic example of 2AR consolidation. Your ability to consolidate in the 2AR is wrecked in a world where you make this argument very inefficiently. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is a 5-second argument, 3 sentences. Sentence 1 is drop the argument makes no sense on condo because that would be condo. Sentence 2 is, this means you don't rectify the abuse when you drop the argument. It just triggers the abuse again. It just does it on theory and substance as opposed to substance and substance. And third sentence is, That would probably just be the 2 sentences.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think the word specifically I would like you to use that you did not use was rectify the abuse. Or this doesn't solve for the abuse.
Yeah.
Right? So you should say, like, the framing issue on drop the argument, drop the debater is would drop the argument be a sufficient punishment for the tuner if the tuner cheated? The answer is a resounding no because the solution is literally also conditionality. So you're saying that we punish you for being conditional by allowing you conditional access to your counterclaim.
Yeah.
Which means uniquely on the condo debate, theory must be a reason to drop the debater. Otherwise, the negs have no incentive ever to stop reading condo.
Yeah.
And I think you make the deterrence argument, but you should frame it in terms of neg incentives.
Yeah.
Does that make
And
sense?
you can also go for like infinite abuse swing or no recourse.
Yeah. But I think that might be doing a little too much then.
Okay.
But no, actually, that's not doing too much because a lot of debaters or judges will think condo is not a voting issue. So it is actually worth putting that second argument there. Cool?
Yeah.
Okay. On the interp counter-interp debate, the size of link argument is good. I think that you should frame it in terms of the 2 standards you're comparing to each other, though. So I would say framing issue on the interpretation counter-interpretation debate is it's going to come down to the ground standard of the 1AR read versus the advocacy skills arguments that the 2NR is making. Even if you think advocacy skills is more important than ground, I can still win this debate by showing that the advocacy skills debate is muddled and the ground debate is not, which means that the size of link determines size of impact, and I have a much larger size of link than you do, but additionally I'm going to win an impact turn on advocacy skills, so I will probably hijack the advocacy skills argument anyways, because the key argument that you are missing is that it's the intersection of both conditionality and word pics, which is uniquely bad. We can still get all of your advocacy skills in a world where you get the word pick, you just don't read it conditionally.
Yeah. Yep.
So, okay, on AT happens under normal condo, the response is normal condo isn't a pick. I think you need one more sentence here that says normal condo allows the 1AR to leverage the AF, which is the crucial difference in this debate.
Yeah.
You're not saying that.
Yeah.
So it's when you're disproving a one-to-one analogy, so they're standing up and like trying to establish something as a one-to-one analogy, and you're disproving that, you need at least 2 sentences there.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I was just trying to articulate the one quickly and be like, because I got through the interp counter debate much faster than I expected.
Yeah, it's
So
just too
you
quick
know,
is what I'm saying.
Time crunch. Yeah.
One sentence arguments in the 2AR on theory will guarantee your judges don't flow it. Like, most judges are not going to flow it the way I just flowed it. I flowed everything you wrote, you said.
Yeah.
I didn't miss a single thing. And that's, like, not usually the case.
Yeah.
So one sentence arguments are not going to get you far. And also, they don't have the ethos. They
Makes
don't have the
sense.
persuasive appeal.
I got you.
Cool. On AT time skew is inevitable. You say it's a question of strategy skew, not time skew. I think that is a good argument, but part of your strat skew link is off time skew. Like you're talking about how the 1AR is always screwed, right? So I think it might be worth adding in a quick argument here that not all time skews are created equal. The difference between getting faster and more efficient is that it's equally accessible, whereas a conditional word pick is not.
Well, this is another argument Cameron conceded out of the NC, so.
Oh, what's that?
Like on time skew and the RBI arguments, he concedes time skew. No impact to time skew.
Oh, okay. Well then, yeah, you need to explain then why your link is not solely dependent on time skew. Yeah, I think you do that fine.
That was sufficient? Yeah, because I don't really know how else to do that.
I think when you extend the ground skew argument, you should explicitly say this is not based off time skew. Or time skew is not the only warrant here.
Yeah.
So can you write that in for a change? Because that's key, because it gives the judge 2 reminders that the concession of time skew is inevitable is not damning for you on the fairness debate for the interp counter-interp.
Yeah.
Cool. AT need to test the AF rhetoric. This is where the impact turn on advocacy skills should go.
Shouldn't that go in the... This is the fourth argument. There's 2 separate ones, which I guess might be what the confusion is. One
Oh, test from multiple angles?
Yeah.
You responded to app rhetoric before you responded to test from multiple angles.
Yes. Test app rhetoric is not an adversarial argument. Maybe it is. It's not labeled as. The fourth one is from the multiple angles one's explicitly labeled as advocacy skills.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that because I didn't watch the 2R. Okay. So on test the app rhetoric and test from multiple angles, I think you handle both of them well. One more sentence of explanation there, though, on each of them is helpful. On the test multiple angles, you had the extra sentence of explanation. It made it way more persuasive.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
This is also where the impact turn on advocacy skills goes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, on the counterinterpretation, your first argument is that the app still has to win a nib. Even if the second layer is easy, it doesn't change that it's a nib.
Yeah.
I have no idea what nib you're referring to.
His argument is, I guess, like, what I'm trying to say is condo is a nib since I have to beat back the counterplan and the squo. You say that it's easy to win the squo, but it's still 2 layers compared to your 1.
Why is it easy to win the squo?
Because his argument is the entire AC is a disadvantage to the stat squo. They can leverage 6 minutes of AC offense against it.
And this is a defensive argument he makes on ground?
Yeah.
Okay. So he puts his defense for ground on the counter interpretation itself?
Yeah.
That's weird.
The counter was only just a few random defense arguments.
Okay. So, and then the one parallel turn was advocacy skills on the interp?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
I guess the third one is like, he says test the app rhetoric, and he says like the discourse arguments out of the word pick itself are net benefit to this. So I guess that's also kind of a parallel turn.
Yeah. Okay. You need to deal with that. So you should explicitly say you hijack those discourse arguments because you ensure we actually get to discuss them. Like you say this discourse is important, but you end up kicking it conveniently. So that makes sense then. 2NR proves abuse since it spends. I think you could have it made. You could have it make a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
By explaining exactly what the 2 nibs you're talking about are.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I still have to win the app is better than counterplan and the squo. Even if it's easy to win the squo, it doesn't matter. It's still 2 layers compared to your 1.
Yeah, exactly. So 2NR proves the abuse since it spends 4 minutes on substance. Why does that prove the abuse? Oh, it goes for squo, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a smart argument. 2NR proves that squo is not as easy as it seems because you go for it. Cool. AT, I chose the plan. It's about ground skew, not predictability. Also, you should just quickly add in topicality is your check, not conditional word picks. So, like, I would say, you say I chose the plan, but that misses the point. It's about ground skew, not predictability. Also begs the question why you get conditional word picks. You get topicality to check back plans. You don't need this one. You don't need this solution.
Yeah.
So that extra 2 sentences goes such a long way, and it takes you literally 3 seconds to say it.
Yeah.
Right? Warrants can be quick if they're persuasively framed. Cool.
Makes sense.
Then at the very end, you like slow down. I don't want you to do that. If you've gotten through time earlier, you jump back up to the paradigm issues and make them even clearer than they already are.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We don't have time in the 2AR to be cute and slow down and like be big picturey and like explain using soliloquies and persuasive flowery rhetoric. Like you just jump right back up to the competing interps reasonability debate and get in one more argument.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, you want to take a couple minutes prep time? Let's try it again.
Yeah.
So for those of you following along at home, try to copy Parker's speech, incorporate all my feedback, take prep time, try it again, and then compare it to the speech he is about to give. So for those of you following along at home, Parker has taken his prep time and is going to give a redo.
All right. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
You say reasonably, but first the two are contradicting self-read right now, competing interpretations on topicality, which means you should not allow me a new introduction of a reasonably in the two because that forces the app to argue against itself. You should just really let the app choose which one they want, and that means competing interpretation. Second is leads to intervention because there's no justification for when enough defense is when good defense is good enough. That means judge intervenes against the argument. So that was a reversibility since we can never check back. Judge intervention doesn't matter how good you get, but you can check back other view scenarios by just getting better debate. Now the drop the debater argument side, the framing issue on drop the debater is that you if I win the condo arguments, you are punishing them. You're punishing conditionality by giving them the condo counterplan by kicking it for them, which means it doesn't check the abuse at all. That means there's an infinite amount of abuse and there's no negative incentive to stop reading conditional counterplans. That way, your argument state bonus is prerequisite to engaging the theory debate in the first place to have actual check on abuse. B bonus is an infinite amount of abuse means there's never any check on abuse ever. Now in the line by line, you say that it doesn't. You don't have to answer the counterplan on substantive layer, but it's still It's still functionally the same thing since I have to win the theoretical layer and the case well, which means you're essentially still getting that. You're still getting that nib that makes the conditionality so abusive. Since I still have to win theory and substance compared to you, which is analogous to me having to win substance anyways. Now I say key to have long-term substance debate, but turn my arguments is better on now wasting duration since it means that you still stop being sketchy and just read arguments that actually engage the app without being abusive, which means that in all those future debates we actually debate about substance at high depth, in-depth level, which is comparatively more important than just a single round. Now it's going to interpretation debate. And the framing issue here is that advocacy skills arguments might be the most important thing in the round, but you don't have a link to them. It's a question of size of link, which only my arguments have a sense to, because it's a question of the unique intersection between conditionality and word pics, which your arguments do not link to. I'll also win a straight turn onto your advocacy skills arguments using a comparatively easy app ballot. Now, extending interpretation, you can't be conditional word pics. The violation conceded. Now, here is where you vote app. You can set the ground standard that theory moots the counterplans and picks moot 6 minutes of AC offense, which means the 1AR has to, as its only strategy, go for turns against the counterplan. But if it's conditional, you can just kick the counterplan, which means I remove my only strategy to go against the argument. This is not a time-ski argument, but I already strategies claim, which will kill answer back your second argument. But now let's go on the live on your few responses. Say it happens on a normal condo. The unique difference between normal condo and this is that normal condo doesn't move 6 minutes of AC offense. I can still weigh the case against the counterplan, which you cannot do in the world of word picks. Now you say times two doesn't apply to times two because that is inevitable, but my argument is a strategy to claim I lose my only strategy against word picks and you screw over the 1AR strategy. Now you say you need to test app from multiple things, but first you can still test the app from you can still test the ass rhetoric because you just have to do so with the unconditional counterplan, which also probably non-unique argument and link turns it because we can just collapse the debate to the word pick, which is having lots of good education on the argument. I say test the app from multiple angles. The first turn we get lots of multiple angles on averages. You can just kick and go. First you turn your averages, you just kick the counterplan, go for its least coverage. If you don't get the averages there. Now second, it's that you can just still read it. It's not you can still read it a very long counterplan and test the app from a single angle, very in depth, which means still test my averages skills. Now you have a few terrible defensive responses on your counter interpretation. You say any advantage the app advantage or disadvantage of the score, but first I still have to win 2 layers, even if win the app outweighs the skill test score and the counterplan. Even if it's easy to beat back the layer, it's not relevant because I still have to win 2 compared to your 1. Second is that clearly not the case in this round. So you spend 4 minutes they want to see on it, which means you have pretty good arguments for why the disadvantage outweighs the case. Now you say I choose the plan. First, I predictability argument, not a ground standard. Second, I can't justify every word out of the 1AC. That is literally impossible. It would take up too much of my speech time, which means that it doesn't solve solve case. 3 is that topicality checks abusive plans, not conditional word picks.
Okay. So I think there's a couple of different things we can do here to improve this. I'm not sure if I liked this speech more or less than last time. I think on this speech, you were not persuasive at all on the link turn for advocacy skills. You spent way longer on the drop the debater, drop the argument debate than you did in your first speech. And you did make the framing issue on the interp counter interp better. I liked that. I think you made the intersection of the 2 argument better. I liked that. But I think there's places where you can improve. So the first places you can improve is when you extend your ground standard, you should use the words recourse, right? Like you need a synonym for strategy. You can't just always say that 1AR strategy is screwed. You have to be able to explain that in the same way using different words. for people to make sense of it. So the same concept should be explained 2 or 3 times using different lingo. And one example of lingo you can use is like the 1AR loses access to its only recourse against word pick.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for example, you could use that lingo when you're responding to the AT time skew is inevitable argument. Now, on multiple angles in discourse, I think you should definitely say, this is the second place you can vote AF. Say that. So number your pieces of offense. Get used to that. This is 2AR consolidation trick. So every piece that you want your judge to vote off of should be numbered.
Yeah.
That's one way you can consolidate. That's one day you can make your 2AR seem like it's getting through a lot more than it may actually be getting through. So I would have said on number 3, like, you can test the ass rhetoric. Your next argument is your linking to advocacy skills. You say we can test the affirmative rhetoric in a world where you get word picks, but that begs the question of why you need conditionality as well, which link turns your argument. The world of the competing, the counter-interpretation is comparatively better for advocacy skills because you're forced to actually defend your criticism of the affirmative's rhetoric, which is you can't just hide behind, you can't just read bad arguments and then hide behind the fact that they were bad by just kicking it in the 2 and R. It actually forces you to be in-depth, it actually forces you comparatively in-depth look into it. Also, depth is probably better than breadth on this debate because it forces you to actually learn the nuances of your claims, which means that you become a better advocate in the long term because you are capable of actually defending the nitty-gritty aspects of your details of whatever you're advocating for, or something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm inefficient, stumbling a lot, nowhere close to like being a top 15, 20 debater in the country, but the framing of it and the way it sounds in the big picture and the way I'm like packaging it is the way I want you to package it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I'm taking the analysis on depth, for instance, one step further. Yeah. And I'm linking it back into advocacy skills. I'm explicitly using the rhetoric, compare that to the world of the counter-interpretation. Or the counter-interpretation is comparatively better for advocacy skills than the interpretation is. Yeah. So another way you could say, like, you become a better advocate when you accept my model of debate compared to the world of the interpretation. Or, yeah. Sorry, the interpretation causes better advocacy skills than the counter-interpretation does. Yeah. Something like that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So this argument is critical. This is an independent piece of offense for you that you expect the judge to vote off of. Yeah. So this argument needs to definitely be articulated better. I also think you could, like, group 3 and 4 and respond to them together. Make sense? Yeah. Okay, so the next thing I didn't think was as good was when you're responding to the, or when you're making the 2 and R proves argument, you should say 2 and R proves that the status quo does not obviously go aft. The fact that you sat on it for 4 minutes indicates that the status quo debate is very much so up for grabs. Yeah. It is not a foregone conclusion that the affirmative will win the squo. So using words like, it is not a foregone conclusion that the AF will win the squo, foregone conclusion there is particularly powerful because it undercuts the baseline assumption of the 2 and R there. Yeah. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Cool. So the last argument, T checks back abusive plans, not condo word picks. I think that those arguments were well done. Ideally, you could have. So, did he only make 2 arguments on the counterinterpretation? He said first that you still have the squo is easier to win, and second that you chose the plan.
He says any advantage to the AF is DA to the squo. There's no reason why condos the intersection is uniquely harmful, but I'm obviously answering that when I'm extending my interpretation. You choose the plans; they should be prepped for this debate.
And that's it.
Reasonability.
And drop the arc.
He also makes this argument like this shell is 25 seconds in the 1AR. Don't allow huge extrapolations.
You probably should end on that. You should be like, the only reason you don't vote affirmative is because you gut check neg on this 25-second argument. The reason my shell was 25 seconds is because what you did was obviously abusive. Yeah. Or the reason my shell was so short is because it doesn't take very long to explain why this was abusive.
Yeah. His argument isn't like 25 seconds gut check neg. It's like don't allow like
extrapolations.
2AR random extrapolations, which I don't think I'm doing.
Yeah, so just be like, look at the line by line and see if I'm extrapolating. I guarantee you I'm not.
Yeah. Cool.
Great. So, let's make this homework for tomorrow.
Cool.
Let's move on. So for those of you following along at home, this is how you should look at videos. This was not a speech that was given in real time, but we use that round as a drill set because we are trying to practice our 2ARs on theory because that's something that Parker feels like he needs to improve upon. And so you analyze your weaknesses, you find debates where those weaknesses could have potentially been relevant, and then you give hypothetical speeches that will let you leverage practice on your weaknesses, which is exactly what we just did.